The realm of mystical art. Okay, well, I grabbed a dozen books here or so from the shelves about mystical art, and I want to say thank you for your kind comment. I do miss making these videos. I'm just trying to figure out how to prioritize my time, but if I don't put captions on this, it only takes 5 minutes. So, let's start with the tarot, because a lot of people think of that for mystical art. Splendor Solis is a really famous tarot alchemy book, and the illustrations are stuff like this. It's really fantastically well done. I actually used a number of these in my graphic novels about our favorite plant, and they're just some of the most glorious alchemy art ever done. Though, according to the academics who wrote this, the idea that alchemy was a Jungian individuation practice and people are using it for their own self-growth is complete modernist Jung claptrap, and that none of that was in there to the original makers, which is fascinating. But still, the art has come to mean that to us, and there's things like the Splendor Solis tarot deck, which I'm hoping to actually get to put up and down our stairs so my kids can see, but it's really beautiful art, and it feels mystical to us while looking at it. Here are a couple of good anthology books. So, whenever you see anthology books out there and the thing you're interested in, they're always worth getting. This is a Pictorial History of Magic and the Supernatural by Bessie. This is a much better one than this de Givry's Illustrated Anthology of Sorcery, Magic, and Alchemy. This has some illustrations in it. This one is chock full of illustrations, and the quality is almost good enough to scan in for some of it. And the other one that was a gift from a friend is the Taschen Alchemy and Mysticism book. It's just a really, Taschen always does such a good job, that crazy old German. I'd love to work with him someday. So this is just a long list of illustrations. And the main lesson I want to share about these anthology books is what's wonderful about them is to go to the sources. It's nice to look through these high-level, things, but you find a piece like this and it says M. Meyer, and then you look up M. Meyer because he's a famous alchemist and he has some of the most beautiful imagery in this field. And so it's worth going and finding the originals. I know online I happen to found a great weird picture of an elephant, and I used it in my books, and I didn't look it up. I just used it. And then I looked it up years later as I was adding more credits to where the illustrations came from, and I found de Plancy's Dictionnaire Infernal from 1863. So from the time of the U.S. Civil War, this book came out, and has this dictionary has a whole bunch of fascinating illustrations on mysticism. And I found that because I looked up my sources, and I think that is really important. Another great book for breaking things down. I got this from the Embassy of the Free Mind. This is Divine Wisdom, Divine Nature, and it is about the visual language of the Rosicrucian manifestos of the 17th century. And so this has people like Michael Meyer in it, though it's a big focus on Heinrich Khunrath, and that is a great person to look up. Heinrich Khunrath made some of the most beautiful illustrations of this time. I can't find his book around here, but they're great books on his stuff. And of course, for modern people, I don't know much modern stuff. I'm very much stuck in the past. But Hilda af Klint is very cool for a modern mystic art, divinely inspired. For an older one, this is the Magus. I don't know. It's what I want to be by the time I'm 44, and I don't know how to pronounce it. But this is interesting, almost more historically. This is Francis Barrett, and this came out in 1801 in English. And so this, for a lot of people in the Western world, especially like US and Europe, or UK, this was their first exposure to the occult of any kind. So this was a very cool book for that, and there are some illustrations and symbols and stuff like that. Personally, I love symbols, and I've been building a little symbol library for, 10, 15 years. Speaking of someone else who's a great popularizer, this is Manly P. Hall's, here's a version of it, The Secret Teachings of All Ages. There are versions like this that are cheap and easy to find, but they don't have the illustrations in them. And I just happened to get lucky from Uncle Buck, and he had this original, which is just a beautifully bound book. I think it's worth quite a bit of money. But also, you can get lucky in used bookstores still, I wish I was in a place with English used bookstores, but I am not. But you can find these around. And there's probably them online as well. And so, for popularizers like these two cats, it's good to look up the sources. And the last thing that I will share is some religious imagery from Christianity, because I grew up in the church, so it's easiest for me in some ways to connect with this and see where it's going. So these are the Jerusalem windows by Chagall, and I actually saw these when I went to Jerusalem to interview the godfather of the endocannabinoid system, Dr. Raphael Mechoulam. And so he works at Ein Kerem Hospital, and that's where these beautiful pieces of art are, just in the chapel at this hospital. So this incredibly influential and important and luscious Jewish artist that did these. He also did a version of the Bible, which is just wonderful, as you can imagine. And so the last piece of Christianity I'll mention is the Life of Christ in woodcuts. I really adore the woodcuts from the early 20th century of the U.S. And so this is James Reed doing stuff on Christ. But I think to end, it's always worth looking to the artists who are already doing what you're trying to do. Just to use AI and Google to look up, who else is doing this kind of imagery, combining the ideas that are most in your head, whether they be from a certain religion or mystical practice. Somebody's played with them before, and it'll help you to see what someone else did in their play, so you can better manifest your version of the play. And it's, for any type of art or human creativity, as Harold Bloom says, we're wrestling with the ones who went before us, and you just want to get as much of what they did in your head, and it's going to help expand what you can do. I don't even quite know how it works, but I know that I, collect this stuff voraciously, and it's just so much fun. I also make graphic novels, so that's part of the reason. So yeah, there's some mystical literature from me. If anyone else has any visuals that they want to recommend, that sounds great. And if I find any other books as I screw around today, I will add them to the chat. So thanks for a nice question. I really appreciate it.